Hello, everybody, and welcome back to more Umineko. Here we are. We're finally at the main house. We had a bit of time with our cousins and stuff and getting to know each other at the guest house, and now we're at the main house getting ready for dinner. As we enter the entrance hall, an aged servant greeted us. Now, him I remembered. Genji, who had been working here longer than anyone, filled the role of head servant.
バトラ様、お久しゅうございます。
As our eyes met, he greeted me with a calm, composed voice. His bow wasn't as graceful or refined as Goda's, but despite its simplicity, it communicated his feelings very well.
源氏さん、本当にお久しぶりっす。お元気そうですね。
おかげさまで健やかに過ごさせていただいております。バトラ様こそご立派になられました。
As we've learned, Genji and our father, well, not our father, our grandfather, I guess. He's a very trusted. Genji is a very trusted individual. He's one of the few things that he one of the few members of he confides into and wants around him, most of the time, right?
親方様の若き日に少し似てこられましたな。
俺がじい様に？ってことは、さぞやじい様は若い頃モテたろうな。
ここからはシャノンに代わって私がご案内申し上げます。どうぞこちらへ。
Shannon bowed deeply and washed his sleeve. After that, we headed towards the dining room under Genji-san's guidance. Genji-san, just like Kumasawa-san, stood in stark contrast to us young people who had grown beyond recognition over the last 6 years. His appearance was exactly the same in my memories from 6 years ago. It was as though time had stopped since the last time we met. Genji-san was an extremely quiet and diligent person. Basically me. He was basically grandfather's close aide or caregiver, and you might even call him grandfather's companion of many years. In fact, it seems he was by grandfather's side even more often than my late grandmother was. According to Jessica, grandfather trusted him more than any of his blood relatives. Man, that's some trust right there. But I wonder how long he served here. I never got the details, but I heard something about him being here since the very beginning, when this mansion was first constructed. He's a lifer. Which would mean that he's dedicated half of his life to serving here. That's crazy. It's easy to see why he's so trusted. As we passed through a massive hall that extended up into the second story of the mansion with no separating floor, I spotted something that hadn't existed in my memory of 6 years ago. And that is... oh, that big-ass painting. It's an awfully big portrait hanging right in front of the stairs that rose to the second floor. Without thinking, I stopped walking, captivated by it. Since I'd stopped so fast, Maria, who was falling behind me, ran into my back.
ああ、悪い。なあ、ジェシカ。あんな絵、前はあったっけ？
Pointed at the big prominent display portrait hanged in the hall. Everyone else stopped too.
ああ、そっか。バトラが来てた頃には、あれはかけられてなかったっけ？いつからだったかな。
確か、僕の記憶が正しければ、一昨年あたりだったと思うよ。
さようでございます。一昨年の4月に、親方様がかねてより画家に命じて描かせていたものを、あそこに展示なされたのでございます。
あのじい様がね、わざわざ描かせてか。
The portrait suited this Western mansion, and that woman in the elegant dress gave off a sense of refinement. I couldn't have guessed her age, but her sharp eyes and the strong will she seemed to possess made her look youthful. She seemed somehow different from the composed middle-aged women you often see in famous photos. If she had normal black hair, I might have assumed it was a portrait of my long-deceased grandmother in her prime. But she doesn't have black hair. However, she had beautiful blonde hair and didn't really look Japanese at all.
で、誰だいこのご婦人はよ。
Maria answered that simple question enthusiastically, as though proud she knew the answer.
マリア知ってる。ベアトリーチェ。
ベア、なんだって？
ベアトリーチェ。魔女だよ。バトラ君は昔聞かされたことない？
魔女？
Oh,
って
what?
この島の？
I think I already said this, but Rokkenjima is a small island, only 10 kilometers in circumference. However, that's actually pretty massive considering that only the Ushiromiya family lives here, right? We just have like the 2 houses. So only the harbor and the area around the mansion were said to be lived in. Beyond that, the island remained as untouched as it was when it was uninhabited. The vast and empty forest had absolutely no lights, phones, or people passing through. I would hope not, anyway. To understand how dangerous that is, that you need to forget your common sense as a city dweller. There's nothing out there. It's wilderness, right? After all, if you happen to fall down a hole in the depths of the forest and sprain your ankle, no one would come save you, no matter how much you cried and screamed, because there's no one here. The island's empty. You would die, probably. Then, once the sun went down, the forest would be wrapped in complete darkness, since there's no streetlights, right? The moon doesn't exist either. And since there were no signs, it'd be easy to get lost and confused, losing your sense of direction inside the dark forest. But I guess the moon wouldn't reach the forest, would it? Nowadays, most people see a forest as a peaceful place, but to the people of bygone eras, before the light of civilization drove out the night, forests were as geographically separated from civilization as the sea. There were oceans above the ground, so to speak. Fishermen who go out into the ocean are putting their lives at risk, despite their technical knowledge. In the same way, hunters who go out in the forests are in danger, despite having specialized knowledge of their own. If children were to go play in such a dangerous forest, something terrible might happen. Someone's parents must have thought so. Maybe grandmother first said it, or maybe it was grandfather himself, I don't know. Or perhaps the story's been passed down on this island since ancient times. Maybe. There's a terrible witch in the forest, so you must not go in. At some point, the ghost story of Rokkenjima was born. This is the legend of Rokkenjima's witch. That's why when we talk about a witch on this island, we're referring to the master of that vast and savage forest. Come to think of it, when I stayed at the mansion as a little kid, during those eerie nights when the wind and rain poured on the windows, I remember being terrified by the story of the forest witch who roamed around searching for human sacrifices. So Beatrice, huh? When Aniki mentioned it, I searched my memory and was sure I recalled hearing a name like that when I was little.
なるほどな。しかし、あの魔女伝説の魔女にベアトリーチェなんておしゃれな名前がついてたとはとんと忘れてたぜ。じいさまめ。孫たちが信じないもんだからわざわざ絵に描きやがったか？
じいさまの妄想の中の魔女だよ。この絵を掲げた頃から現実と幻想の区別がつかなくなり始めた。私たちにとっては想像の中の魔女に過ぎないけど、じいさまにとっては彼女はこの島にいる存在。だからそれを理解することができない私たちにもわかるようあの絵を描かせたって言うんだけど気持ち悪いったらありゃしないぜ。
お嬢様、親方様にとっては大切な肖像画です。親方様の前でそのようにおっしゃられることがございませんよ。固くお願い申し上げます。
分かってるぜ。頼まれても言わねえよ。
Jessica glanced at the portrait with an irritated gaze before turning away. She doesn't like this, apparently.
食堂にみんなを待たせてるよ。
お腹すいた。
I'm hungry too, Maria. Let's get some food. I don't have any food here, though. I gotta order some food. Only a small portion of this island was controlled by the Ushiromiya family. Wait, I thought they owned the island. Oh, never mind. All of the lawless remainder was the domain of the witch. Yeah, she just kind of allows them to live there. You might even call her the true ruler of Rokkenjima. I felt a faint revival of that unsettling sense of misfortune, which I'd felt when I was learned of the Totori God's shrine being struck by lightning. And I remember that Kumasawa-san tried to tell an ominous story about Rokkenjima before Jessica stopped her. Oh, that's right, yeah. I don't know what she was planning to tell us about the island. But I do know one thing. It isn't the Ushiromiya family that controls Rokkenjima. It is the witch Beatrice. That's right. After all, this is the witch's island.
Batola! Osai!
Sorry, I'm monologuing. When I looked around, everyone was already heading towards the dining room. I hurriedly chased after them. We walked up to the huge double doors that led to the dining room.
お子様方をお連れいたしました。
Take them back. I
失
don't
礼
want
い
them.
たします。
The doors were opened and we were invited inside. The dining room, which looked exactly like you'd imagine a rich person's dining room would be, had a super long table that was obviously positioned with no purpose other than to make the guests conscious of their rank. Our parents were already sitting in accordance with that ordering.
遅えぞガキども。早く席に着けよ。
The only gaps in that group of people were the spots we were supposed to sit, which only made us feel like our tardiness all the more. The seat at the head of the table, called the incipient's chair, was for the most highly ranked, reserved for a grandfather, of course. It was still empty. He's not here. He probably wanted to show up for dinner for dramatic effect. From the perspective of someone facing the incipient's chair head on, the seating order went from left to right, with the lower ranking seats progressing in rows of two further away from it. So the left hand of the first row closest to the incipient's chair was where Uncle Cross should have sat, since he was the second highest in rank. Looked like he hadn't arrived yet, so that seat was empty. Across from his chair on the right side of the first row sat the eldest daughter of the family, Aunt Ava, who was the third highest in rank. The left-handed side of the second row was for the fourth highest in rank. There sat my damn dad, Rudolph, the third of the siblings. Across from him on the right side of the second row sat Aunt Rosa, the youngest sibling. At this point, you might expect their husbands and wives to come next. But nope, the left-handed seat in the third row, ranked number 6, belonged to Jessica. Opposite her was George and Nikki. I sat next to Jessica, and Maria sat across from me. Then, finally next to me on the left-hand side of the fifth row sat Aunt Natsui, the 10th highest in rank. She doesn't look happy about it. Opposite her was Uncle Hideyoshi. Next to Aunt Natsui in the 6th row, and finally on the left-hand side of the seat sat Kiri's hand. Sorry. The seat next to opposite Kiri's hand was empty, even though the silverware had been set there and everything. According to this ranking system, that spot was where Aunt Rose's husband should be sitting. Even though he wasn't supposed to be coming, his place was made up anyway. Interesting. Normally, ranking systems of this sort give spousal equal positions as their partners, but the Ushiromiya family system was unique. Maybe it's a remnant of male chauvinism. I mean, it's probably more what it is. If you start with the assumption that a woman's womb is just something to be borrowed, and the children of the direct descendant would come first, directly followed by the grandchildren. In other words, spouses really have no blood ties and are therefore placed at the end of the line. It's terrible, but by this system, my grandmother would be ranked even lower than me. If she were still alive, of course. In their youth, they obey their father. After they get married, their husband. After aging, their children. As the old saying, women have no home in any realm. Long ago, when I was still incapable of figuring all of this out, I thought it was so great that we could all chat in our little groups. Adult siblings with adult siblings and cousins with cousins. Little did I know. However, now that I can re-examine the seating order after growing up a bit, it stirs up some very complicated feelings in me. Natsui, who was married to the eldest son and was the de facto number 2 in managing this family, sat to my right, which meant that she was 2 steps lower than me in the ranking order. It was hard to imagine what might be going on inside her heart. I can't imagine she's pleased about all this, and that's why I made a small apologetic gesture towards her before sitting down.
お久しぶりですね、バ
I
ト
mean,
ラ
we
君。
can't really control our birth
ずいぶん
rate.
背が伸びましたね。
ああ、はい。食ったり食べたり食事したりしてたらいつの間にかこんな身長に。
さすが男の子ね。身長はいくつくらいあるの？
180かな。つうかおばさん、そこは食べてばっかりじゃねえかって突っ込んでくださいよ。
え？ああ。ごめんなさいね。
After a short pause, she did laugh with me, but it seemed she couldn't quite figure out what she was supposed to be laughing at. Laughs to laugh, you know. This woman is Aunt Natsui. She's the wife of the eldest son of the family, meaning she's my father's older brother's wife. Is it simpler if I just call her Jessica's mother? It's probably simpler. It feels bad to say it like this, but while I didn't exactly dislike her, I didn't really particularly like her either. She hardly ever spoke with us kids, and all my memories of her involve her talking to the adults about complicated things with a scary look on her face. In fact, since we hardly ever exchanged words, I spent a long time trying to figure out how I should approach her. I never talked to her. Though my efforts seemed to have ended in failure. Silverware sat neatly on the table, but the meal itself hadn't been brought in yet. As a general rule, you couldn't start a meal until the person sitting at the head of the table arrived. It's just good manners. So long as grandfather didn't come, lunch would be put on hold indefinitely. Not even the appetizers would arrive. No! Simply put, the silence in this room was caused by our parents enduring their hunger while they waited for grandfather to arrive. However, the grandfather from my memories would always show up on time to meals like this. What's the holdup? He was the kind of person who would never be so late that it kept everyone waiting, especially after the entire group had arrived. It's just rude at this point.
遅えな、じいさま。俺の記憶じゃ時間に厳格な人だったと思うんだけどな。
まあ、6年前はそうだったかもな。最近はそうでもねえよ。というか、もう自分の世界オンリーって感じで、会食にも顔を出さねえぜ。さすがに今日くらいは足並みを揃えてくれるって思ってたんだけどな。まあ、私は来ない方が気楽で嬉しいけどよ。
ジェシカ。
When her mother scolded her, Jessica stuck her tongue out and looked away. She didn't seem to care for her mother. No way around it. Might as well wait until her host arrives. When I glanced at the clock, I saw that it was almost 12:20. It is not 12:20 here. It is 11:35 in the morning. Ushiromiya Kinzo, the aged family head of the Ushiromiya head family. This man could be seen in his study. The clock had already passed noon, but he hadn't even attempted to rise from his seat. With the spectacles on, he built up a growing pile of books with elaborate bindings which he read intently. You couldn't really say that he was having too much fun to stop, rather he filled the room with a sense of impatience, or perhaps a sense of impending danger, as though every second wasted was a tragedy. In this sealed room, a dense dust danced through the air, which was thick with the stench of chemicals that exuded a mix of suspicious odors. He practices witchcraft and stuff, right? Those odors were somehow sweet and heavy. If anyone with a normal nose came here, the first thing they did would be to open a window and ventilate this room. The knocking against the door had been going on for a while, a voice calling father sometimes mingled with the knocks. As Kinzo heaved a deep sigh, he snapped shut the old book in his hands and slammed it on the table. Then he yelled at Cross, who was still knocking on the door. Have we seen Cross yet?
やかましいその音を止めぬか愚か者叩けば扉は開かれると誰が教えたそのバカ者は貼り付けにしたぞお前もそうされたいのかお父さん
年に一度の親族会議の日ではありませんか。皆下に集まっています。
It's important to get down
ど
here.
うかおいでください。
Frost called out to his father through the door. Kenzo always shut himself up in the study, hating it when nearly anyone, even his family, entered the room. For that reason, Cross had no choice but to call him from the corridor like this.
私にかがうでない。
Molesting
皆
not.
とは何か、私をここから引きずり出そうとする者どもなのか。ならば殺してしまい、バラバラにして薪にして魔女の炉にくべてしまい、その炉には鍋をかけて苦いおもぎを煮るがいい。
I don't think he's all there.
黙示録の煮汁はそれでも私をここから連れ出そうとするバカ者どもに飲ませてやれ。残りは酒につけるのだ。ああ、源氏はどこだ。源氏を呼べ。苦害の魔酒を用意させろ。緑の妖精のささやきが届かぬ。ああ、源氏はどこだ。源氏を呼べ。
On the other side of the door, Cross, Nanjo, and Genji kept waiting for the master of the house, who stubbornly refused to come out.
すっかり嫌われてしまったようだ。もう私の声では何も届かんよ。
Cross shrugged as though saying, it's no use, and smiled bitterly. From the beginning, he hadn't really expected his father to respond to his calls. However, since it was the duty of the oldest son, he had tried as a formality.
金蔵さん、あんたの顔を見に息子や娘や孫たちが来てるんじゃないか。ちょっと顔を見せてやったらどうだね。
うるさい、黙れ。私に意見するというか南條。貴様など呼んではおらぬ。私は源氏を呼べと言ったのだ。さあ急げ、すぐに呼べ。時間は常に有限だ。人たちはすでにラッパを構えているぞ。なぜにそれがわからぬか、愚かな羊どもめ。
Genzo slammed an old, heavy book against the table over and over. That racket clearly expressed his great displeasure. Genzo put his spectacles down and flew up from his chair. He spread his arms wide open as if to sing to a packed opera house, as if appealing to someone, and yelled.
なぜだ。なぜにいつも私には邪魔が入るのか。 すべてを捨てよう。すべてを捧げよう。その見返りに私は一つしか求めないというのに。ああ、ベアトリーチェ。お前の微笑みをもう一度見られるならば、私は世界中から美少を奪い取り、すべてをお前に捧げよう。おお、イナゴの軍団長たちよ。 世界中から美少を刈り取り収穫せ。すべてが汚らわしい。すべてが煩わしい。なぜこの貴重な一日に私は邪魔を受けねばならぬのか。源氏を呼べ。
何を怒鳴ってるのかもさっぱりだな。もう頭がどうにかなっているのだろう。
クラウスさん、実のお父さんにそりゃあんまりじゃないかね。
親父はすでに死んでいる。ここにいるのは親父だったものの幻さ。いずれにせよ本人にここを出る意志がない以上どうにもならんね。
金蔵さん。
Choking coughs continued to pour from the study.
私は下に戻る。ゴーダの自慢のランチをこれ以上無駄に冷ましてしまうことはない。親類たちにとって当家での数少ない楽しみだろうからな。
Cross spun around. He looked at his watch, mumbling and acting as though he had wasted some time doing something he knew would be in vain.
源氏さん、親父殿がお呼びだ。相手を頼む。
かしこまりました。
南條先生、食事に行きましょう。いつまでもここにいると、この甘い匂いで味覚までおかしくなってしまう。
Without waiting for Nanjo, Cross went downstairs. Genji urged Nanjo to go and eat. Nanjo glanced between the study door and Cross's back as the latter disappeared down the stairs and then let out a deep sigh.
すまんが源氏さん、頼みます。
はい、お任せください。
お酒はなるべく与えないように。あれは常習性が強すぎる。
源氏はまだか。何者が源氏を阻んでいるというのか。源氏はどこだ。源氏を呼べ。
さあ、ここはお任せください。
すみませんな。
Nanjo bowed slightly and descended the stairs. Genji watched him leave, then knocked at the study door.
親方様、源氏でございます。
源氏か。何故私をこれほどに待たすのか。そこには誰もおるまいな。
はい、私だけでございます。
Genzo returned to his seat in the study and pressed an old-fashioned switch on the table. After a small delay, the heavy sound of the door unlocking could be heard. Genzo was convinced that his family wanted to make a mess of his study. Perhaps someone had once opened the window for some air and ended up scattering things that to him were important research materials, leaving him in a terrible mood. Terrible. Genzo had outfitted his room with a formidable lock, preventing anyone from entering without his permission and thereby sealing himself in a jail of his own making. Genji, whom he trusted the most, was relatively free to enter the room, but even that didn't always hold. If Genzo was in a bad mood, even Genji wouldn't be able to enter. Anyone else would be limited to holding a conversation through the door, unable to even see Genzo's face. And most of the time, what they got could hardly be called a conversation, as you just witnessed. However, that didn't trouble the rest of the family much. After all, it just wasn't worth the effort to disturb this aging family head who was impossible to please and always stayed shut away, immersed in his research. Taking advantage of his refusal to leave his room, they supported his isolation, putting his care entirely into the hands of the servants.
源氏、いつものやつを頼む。私は忙しい。
はい。
Genji headed to the corner of the study. There, suspiciously looking bottles boasting venomous colors were on display. They were actually liqueur, but considering the shady atmosphere of this room, one might easily suspect them to be of some ghastly poison. I mean, what's the difference, right? Inside the study, the mysterious collection of books gathered by Kinzo had grown into a mountain. There were bizarre ancient or banned books, all of them either forbidden, cursed, or sealed. But if you tried to call them old books, Kinzo would fly into a rage and say, call them grimoires. There were also many mysterious objects that presumably held some meaning with regards to black magic, like candles suspiciously melted and molded into strange shapes. The constellation drawn on the certain celestial globe contained quite a few shapes that would draw puzzled looks from anyone familiar with today's night sky. The carelessly strewn about books contained many illustrations, all of them of religious or mysterious nature, including some depicting demonically grotesque subjects or bizarre diagrams of various magical circles. And above all, a sweet, poisonous smell filled the room, profoundly assaulting the eyes and noses of those who entered for the first time. Eventually, it must surely make a person go numb and lose their grip on reality. Inside that study, Genji prepared Kinzo's usual drink with a well-trained hand. It seemed like he did not care what Nanja had to say. No one would even think of drinking such an ominous dark green liquid in that complex and ornate glass unless someone first told them it was alcohol. He poured a little into the glass. Then he placed a cube of sugar in a strangely shaped spoon and poured water from a pitcher over it. Interesting. Strangely, when the transparent water was poured, the dark green liquid turned a cloudy white. It was a strange optical illusion, as though the water had caused a chemical reaction and made the drink become even more unrecognizable as liquor. Then Genji added original flavors Kinzo loved, fine-tuning its taste. There was no recipe. Its success was measured only by Kinzo's mood swings when he drank it, and it had taken Genji many decades to learn how to do it right. Genji placed the glass on the tray and walked over to Kinzo. By this time, Kinzo was gazing out the window.
どうぞ、親方様。
ああ、すまん。
Kinzo had regained his composure and was now unrecognizable as the shouting, screaming, yelling man from just a few moments ago. Looking at this man from behind as he tilted his glass and gazed on at the scenery behind the window, he projected a sense of dignity and intelligence. He allowed Kinzo to set his glass down at any time. Genji motionlessly waited behind Kinzo and to his left, as though he were a living sideboard. Then, without averting his eyes from the window, Kinzo held out his glass. There was only a mouthful remaining. It was not a gesture intended to set upon the tray, but a motion to hand the glass over to Genji.
飲め、我が友よ。
もったいないお言葉です。
私とお前の中に儀礼はいらぬ。飲め、友よ。
いただきます。
Genji respectively received the glass and inclined it a little to taste its contents. After that, he gulped it down.
お前が作るのを真似ているのだが、どうにも同じ味が出ぬ。お前が作る方がうまい。
ありがとうございます。親方様のご指導の賜物です。
Kinzo smiled at his loyal subject, who refused to put aside rank even when asked to. However, he was not making fun of him. His smile was relaxed, as though chuckling at a close friend's old, unshakable habit.
互いに老いたな。年を数えることも忘れてすでに久しい。
今日まで過ごすことをお許しいただけたのも、すべて親方様のおかげでございます。
Kinzo gave a faint smile, as if to say he didn't need any flattering.
今日まで本当によく私に仕えてくれた。息子たちは誰もが私を変人呼ばわりした。大勢いた使用人も皆私を恐れてやめていった。お前だけが今でも私に仕えてくれる。も
ったいないお言葉です。
私の余命もそう長くはあるまい。息子たちは私の遺産がいつ転がり込んでくるかをうろうろ待つハゲタカばかりだ。クラウスの愚か者は金を湯水のように使い、1枚の金貨を売るのに2枚の金貨を捨てておる。それで金を稼げたなどと妄言を。エヴァは金の亡者だ。あやつは私を鶏か何かだと思っておる。死んだらガラにして出汁まで取る気だ。ルドルフの間抜けは女遊びばかり。ローザはどこの馬の骨ともわからん男の赤ん坊など産みおって、ジェシカは無能で無学だ。ジョージには男としての器がない。バトラーは後ろ宮家の栄誉を自ら捨ておった愚か者だ。マリアなど見るのも汚らわしい。なぜだ、なぜに後ろ宮の血はこうも無能なのか。私の築き上げた栄光を受け継ぐにふさわしい者はおらんのか。ああ、分かっておるとも。 これがベアトリーチェの呪いであることも分かっておる。黄金の魔女め、それが私への復讐のつもりか。憎みたくば憎むがよい。逃げたければ逃げるがよい。逃がさぬ、逃がさぬ、逃がさぬ、逃がさぬわ。お前は私のものだ。常に私の腕の中でなくてはならん。私の生涯のすべてなのだ。我が鳥かごにて永遠に私だけにささやき続けるのだ。ベアトリーチェ、なぜに微笑み返してはくれぬ。おお、ベアトリーチェ。
After howling, Kinzo choked once again. Genji set the tray down and glass down and rubbed his master's back. Genji's facial expression did not change. It was always like this.
すまぬ我が友よ。
When his seemingly deranged fit subsided, Kinzo regained his composure once more. It was like seeing two different people, a wild Kinzo and a composed Kinzo living together inside of one body.
故に私は決心した。このままぼやききった余生を怠慢に過ごすことなどもはや耐えられはせん。この身に最後にとするコインがあるならば、それを悪魔たちのルーレットに託してみたい。魔法の力はいつもかけるリスクで決まる。日本古来の呪術である牛の国参りがそうであろう。7日間儀式を目撃されてはならないというリスクを支払うからこそ魔力が宿る。困難なリスクが生じれば生じるほどに魔力は強く生じるのだ。神話に登場する数々の奇跡は天文学的リスクに奇跡的な低確率を得て成就した驚愕すべき魔力の結晶なのだと言える。モーゼが海を割ったのは神の奇跡ではない。蹂躙の計りに乗せられ軍勢によって航海に追い詰められた絶体絶命のリスクが奇跡の魔力を生んだのだ。同じことが同じ規模で繰り返されようとも再び海が割れることはないだろう。なぜならモーゼは力ある者たちのルーレットの阿葬儀ナユタをかけたよりも多く存在する目の中に一つだけ刻まれた奇跡を見事引き寄せることができたからだ。その天文学的確率に勝利できる力、そう奇跡をつかみ取る運気はすなわち魔力なのだ。強大な魔力を得るためには絶望的なリスクを背負わねばならぬ。魔力もたぬ者はそれを賭けでなく自暴自棄と呼ぼう。しかし真に魔力ある者はその奇跡をつかみ取り神秘を成就させるのだ。もしも私にその魔力があるならば私はその奇跡をつかみ取るだろう。生涯を費やした願いを実現できるだろう。
Kenzo looked up to the sky outside the window. He spread his arms as if appealing to someone up in the skies.
もし私にその奇跡を手にする資格があったなら、おー、ベアトリーチェ、ベアトリーチェ、お前の愛くるしい笑顔をもう一度だけ見せてくれ。どれほどの月日を経ようともお前の面影が消えることはない。ただお前の微笑が見たい。 それだけだ。お前から授かったものを全て返そう。あの日からの栄光を全てお前に返そう。富も名誉も黄金もいらぬ。お前に授かった全てを返そう。私はただお前の美少が見たいだけなのだ。五章だ、ベアトリーチェ。
His nonsensical yells became a scream and then a wail. Ginzo slumped to the floor, tearing at it with both hands. Genji had no choice but to wordlessly watch over his master's lamentations.
Ya, 諸君。当主様は具合が優れられないとのことだ。せっかくこうして1年ぶりの会合に集まってくれた諸君と昼食を共にできないことを非常に残念にしておられた。ゴーダ、ランチを始めてくれ。
かしこまりました。それでは本日の昼食を始めさせていただきます。
南條先生、そんなにお父様のお具合は悪いの？せめて顔くらい見せてくれてもいいわよね。
体調というよりは機嫌ですな。こればかりはつける薬がありませんので。
おいおい、機嫌ってまたかよ。そりゃないぜ。こちとら秋のクソ忙しい時期にスケジュール都合してご機嫌伺いに来てるんだ。それをよ。
よかったじゃないか、ルドルフ。ご機嫌は伺えたんだ。それとも不機嫌な親父殿を私に代わりお前が説得して連れてきてくれるのかね。
まさか。
Rudolph shrugged. Apparently, though Rudolph was willing to be indignant at how self-centered his father was, he wasn't particularly disappointed to be spared a face-to-face meeting.
夕食までにはその機嫌治りそうなの？クラウス兄さん。
そんなことは知らんよ。親父殿に直接聞いてみるといい。もっとも声をかけない方が機嫌の治りは早いと思うがね。
源氏さんだけだよ。じい様の機嫌を直せるのは。情けないぜ。自分の親の機嫌を使用人に直させるんだからよ。
ジェシカ、余計なことは言わなくていい。
He'd planned for her compliment to be heard only by her cousins, but it had reached even across his ears. Scolded, Jessica scowled and turned away, sulking.
機嫌がうんぬんってことは、病状はそんな悪くないんじゃねえの？元気がないってんならともかく、機嫌が悪いってのは少なくとも気はしっかりしてる証拠だぜ。
おじい様は特に強い気力をお持ちだからね。でも体が必ずしもそれに伴えるとは限らないよ。去年からずっと余命3ヶ月って言われ続けてる。最初の診断が正しいならおじい様は気力だけで流られてるってことになる。気遣ってあげないといけないよ。
Lunch started with the family's head seats still empty. The man who should be sitting there had already grown old, and the brilliant glory which had rebuilt the Yoshida family in the span of a single lifetime was being forgotten. Even though they were beginning the meal with that seat still empty, no one felt it was that odd anymore.